We wait to the end of the week every single week to do this particular video to get the most accurate injury information. All I ask is that you go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm the only fantasy YouTuber who covers defense multiple times on a weekly basis. Going down to our first matchup here, the Packers at the Jaguars here. I still view the Packers as a must-start defense this week. Look, their defense is just all over the place. They are so physical at the point of attack. That's why they're leading the league in total turnovers. They are forcing turnovers against everybody. 2 turnovers a game, basically. They're absolutely all over every single team that they play. Now, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars is the only major injury of note here, and he's a game-time call. Honestly, I think it'd be better for the Packers defense if they played Travis Etienne. The way Tank Bigsby's playing right now, he's kind of playing out of his mind a little bit. So I actually prefer the Packers defense to be able to play Travis Etienne, who's banged up, rather than playing against the Tank Bigsby full time. So the Packers defense I view as a must start this week. I think they'll be able to get turnovers regardless of if the Jags score 25 or 10 points. And then the Jags defense, you literally cannot play them against anybody. They are atrocious. Their defense is a disgrace. They can't get anything going. They can't stop anybody. They have 1 interception all year, and Jordan Love's about to go nuclear on these guys. Arizona Cardinals at the Miami Dolphins is our next matchup here. I view Arizona as a playable defense. That's why they're in the flex category here. I think they're playable. Look, the Cardinals defense, they are still banged up right now. And Tua Tagovailoa is coming back this week, which is big news, obviously, for the Miami Dolphins. But Tyreek Hill is questionable all of a sudden. So if he doesn't go, like, that offense will not be the same. That offense needs those 2 pieces in particular. So if you're missing one, it's not going to be as good. So I think the Cardinals defense, actually, they've been playing pretty well in fantasy football. They're a little bit of a sneaky play if you don't have access to any of the top 12 defenses that I went through earlier in the week. And then the Dolphins defense, I'm going to stay away from them personally. I will acknowledge that the Cardinals are definitely a hot and cold team, that week to week it's hard to know what to expect. So the Dolphins defense, they're just stupid banged up right now. And the Cardinals offense, they're kind of humming right now. So I'm just going to stay away from the Dolphins defense. The New York Jets at the New England Patriots here. The Jets are must start, but I will tell you this. Let me just tell you. The Jets defensive line, they're still banged up. The Patriots offensive line is really banged up. And Jalen Polk, their receiver, is out over there as well. And I'll tell you this. The Jets defense they have been objectively bad since firing Robert Saleh. And some people attribute that to the injuries that they have on the defense over there. I attribute that to no Robert Saleh and their defensive coordinator being thrust into a new role that he didn't have to do ever in his life until a couple weeks ago. So I think the Jets defense is not particularly great in fantasy anymore. But they are playing the Patriots, and just the Patriots as a team, as a collective unit. When I read that Gerard Mayo called them soft, the head coach over there called them soft a couple days ago, it made me think this team is about to quit on Gerard Mayo. So maybe it happens this week, maybe it doesn't. But of course, I'm comfortable playing the Jets defense knowing that the Patriots are an utter disaster. And the Patriots defense, I'm going to lean on sitting them. While the Jets offensive line is banged up, and the Patriots defensive line is banged up as well, I think that kind of is an even Steven situation here. And their entire defense is just banged up. So I think the Patriots, just with their team morale, they're not going to be playing super hard this Sunday. Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns this week. I think Baltimore is definitely a must start. Obviously, with no Deshaun Watson, they get Jameis Winston, which is an upgraded quarterback for sure. But it's also not a situation that we're looking at and saying, this offense is going to go from 10 points a game to 30 points a game. It's not like they had the, Tom Brady underneath Deshaun Watson all this time. It's Jameis Winston. He's still going to toss some interceptions and definitely miss on some big plays here. So I could definitely still count on the Ravens defense, although I will say Marlon Humphrey is doubtful in this game, which is a big loss for them, because that's the guy who got them 2 interceptions last week. And the Ravens just have not flat out been good in fantasy football. They have flat out not been good all year long. So play this one with caution. They're not my favorite start this week, but obviously the matchup makes them very favorable. And the Browns defense, I'm staying away from. Zay Flowers is questionable, and the Browns defense is getting healthier, and they've looked better. But in this divisional matchup, just the way the Ravens are putting up points ad nauseum, I'm just going to stay away from any defense in particular that's playing the Baltimore Ravens. The Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals this week. You can't play either defense because I think this is going to be a shootout. I think that both teams are going to put up a lot of points. That being said, if you're really looking for something to start because all the defenses that are good are scooped up, here's some important injuries to note. The Eagles' offensive line is banged up, specifically their left tackle Mylota and their right guard Mekhi Becton. So that's obviously, those are two big losses for them this week. Dallas Goedert is also out in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Bengals defense, the way that they've been playing over the past 2 weeks, potentially, if you wanted to use them, they're my favorite defense this week out of the two. Between Philadelphia and Cincinnati, I prefer Cincinnati if you really got to shoot deep. T. Higgins, he's got a quad injury on Friday in practice. He is now questionable in this game. Every single week that we've had an injury midweek or late in the week at practice, it doesn't turn out well. So T. Higgins, all more than likely, I'm going to say now, probably just not playing this game tomorrow on Sunday. So that opens up potentially an opportunity for the Eagles defense. Orlando Brown, their starting tackle, though, he is coming back and he is playing in this game. So to me, I just think there's more issues with the Philadelphia Eagles side of the ball than there is with the Bengals here. So I would say if I had to play one to be the Bengals, but I'm trying to stay away from both these defenses ideally. The Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans this week. The Texans defense, they moved down my rankings, but they're still up there. The big reason that they moved down there is that Jonathan Taylor is making his long-awaited return. Welcome back, Jonathan Taylor, man. Been a long time, we miss him. But the Texans defense, as a result, is a little bit lower in my ranked. And their defense is still pretty banged up. Like their front seven is still a little banged up, and they're even banged up at the safety position as well. So the Colts defense, they're really banged up. And I get it, like off the Texans' bad week last week offensively, maybe some optimism to play them in a divisional matchup. I'm not doing it. I'm just not going to do it this week with the Colts defense. They haven't even really been able to take advantage of good matchups. This isn't a good matchup here, so I'd stay away from the Colts. I would say that the Texans have moved down in my rankings this week as the weeks went on, but they're still inside the top 12. The Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions this week. Detroit is, it's not a question. They're a must start. I don't care who the quarterback is, whether it's Levis or Mason Rudolph. You play the Lions defense, man. This defense is, I mean, they're banged up. I will say that the Lions defense, they're not fully healthy by any stretch of the imagination. So they're not exactly the best, like, most healthy defense. But at this point in week 8, nobody's fully healthy. So the Lions defense, they make a lot of sense to me. Levis is questionable in this game. It'd be better for them to take on Levis, obviously. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Rudolph or Will Levis. You play the Lions defense regardless. And then the Titans this week, you can't play them. Lions offense is rolling. And their defense is just ravaged with injuries, and they haven't been good in fantasy. So I'm not playing the Titans, but you better believe I'm playing the Lions this week. The Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. The Falcons' defense is playable. It's a sketchy play for me, though, to be honest with you. It should be better because, obviously, it changes everything when you've got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans out of the lineup. Their passing game's not going to be nearly as good. They're not going to be nearly as lethal offensively as they were in past weeks. Bucky Irving, questionable expected to play. I got bad information on last night's live stream when I said that he was not going to play. Bucky looks like he's going to play. So that does help their running game, but their passing game is still a little bit weak this week, and Baker does turn the ball over. So the Falcons defense, even though they're still missing Troy Anderson, their linebacker, and Justin Simmons, their safety, I still do look at the Falcons as a decent level play here, just because of the fact that they are going against a team that is turnover prone and without their two top playmakers this week. And I'm not playing the Bucs defense. The Falcons offense looks good. Aside from last week, you take that away, they've been putting up tons of points, and they just put up tons of points and yards on them several weeks back. Not playing the Bucs defense. The New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Chargers this week. The Chargers defense is still a very, very good starting option. The Saints, they're obviously banged up. With Derek Carr still being out, it just is like you cannot count on any kind of like good play from Spencer Rattler. Chris Olave's coming back, big deal. He's not making the difference here. Chargers secondary and Joey Bosa, they're still banged up, so it does present a little bit of doubt, and maybe that's the reason why over the last several weeks they haven't really hit a ceiling game yet, but I think that this is a good opportunity. Here's one thing I'll tell you this really quick. The Saints defense briefly were a playable defense in my mind, but I opted against doing it. The Saints defense, their secondary is really banged up. Paulson Adebo, their big playmaker on the back end, he's on the IR, and he was doing really well for them this year. So their turnover capability, I think, just dropped a little bit. Quentin Johnston is still out, and Will Dissly and Ladd McConkey are questionable in this game. So again, the Chargers, it's not like they're super healthy, but the Saints defense, I'm just going to opt against it because I think their one weakness that's been exploited the last some weeks is the run, and J.K. Dobbins is going to be fired up in this game. So I'm going to stay away from the Saints, and I would definitely play the Chargers in this one. The Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks. This one's confusing, but I think they're both playable, even though I think it could be a potential shootout. There's a lot of ways I think this game could go. Listen, DK Metcalf is doubtful in this game. Terrell Bernard, the Bills linebacker, he's out. So there's definitely going to be a lack of playmaking from a deep threat in Seattle. They're going to have to rely on Tyler Lockett and Jack Smith-Njigba. Obviously, you've got Kenneth Walker, so it definitely makes that Seattle offense lethal either way. And their offensive line's a lot healthier. So the Bills' defense, just the way that they can play sometimes, I do like the potential of playing them, but the Seahawks are really, really right behind them. I mean, the Seahawks defense, they're getting healthier, and it proved last week when they absolutely destroyed the Falcons. A really good offense, but the Bills' offense is really good as well. So just being in Seattle, I think that makes their defense playable because their fans are going to be fired up, and the Seahawks are the type of team that could blow you out, but so are the Bills. This is the most curious matchup of the week for me. I would say that they're both playable, but I would not prefer to play either of them if you could afford not to. The Bears defense at the Washington Commanders, I think, is a fantastic play. The Bears defense, it all hinges on one guy. Let's make it very clear. Jaden Daniels is a game-time decision. He practiced a little bit on Friday. So if Jaden Daniels goes, the Bears defense is still startable for me because their defense is so good at fantasy, but they're not as high upside. Without Jaden Daniels, the Bears defense could be the number one defense on the week. I think the Bears defense is in line for a good game regardless because they're just so turnover happy and they can get after the quarterback. Their secondary is still banged up, but I think that the Bears off a bye week, they're going to be fired up in this game. And I would definitely take them if Jaden Daniels is or isn't in this game. Definitely not my favorite play if Jaden Daniels is in the game, but if he's not in the game, then the Bears defense is really good. So just monitor this one throughout the next 48 hours or so. And then the Commanders defense, you know, I'll be honest with you, the Commanders defense, I'm reevaluating to see if maybe they're better than I think. I don't think that I'm going to play them this week. Versus Chicago off a bye when all their playmakers are healthy, I don't think this is a good opportunity for the Commanders, who are also banged up themselves, especially in the front seven. The Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Kansas City, you have to play them, right? Like, the matchup makes simply too much sense. Gardner Minshew's their starting quarterback this week. Their team's a disaster. Their best playmaker outside of Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, he's questionable still. So, like, it doesn't make any sense to sit the Chiefs this week. That being said, Chiefs defense, they don't get the splash plays needed for fantasy football success. Turnover, sacks, they're lower on them. So in a divisional matchup, it makes it a little interesting, and that's why I say, if you feel really frisky this week, the Raiders are a play. A low-end play. The Raiders have an underdog quality to them. They're the last team that's beaten Kansas City. Last Christmas, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders obviously are a disaster. I'm not playing the Raiders. I don't feel this frisky. But if you feel frisky, there's merit to it. The Juju Smith-Schuster, he's out, and DeAndre Hopkins is in, so that obviously is going to help the Chiefs. Max Crosby's dealing with an injury, so that's the reasons I'm not playing. Other than the fact that the Raiders are a disgrace, because Antonio Pierce is not good. But I will say that if you're feeling really frisky, the Raiders have an underdog quality to them, and they might end up winning this game and really shocking people in a defensive perspective. Because Mahomes does turn the ball over. The Carolina Panthers at the Denver Broncos this week. The Denver Broncos, I don't think there's ever been an easier start. I mean, literally, everything lines up. Pat Surtain coming back from the injury. Deontay Johnson being out, their best wide receiver. Bryce Young is starting. That obviously just ravages everybody else on the Panthers' offensive side of the ball. The Broncos defense outside of Surtain last week was healthy, and they still dominated the Saints. there's no reason to talk about it. You play the Broncos defense and you don't play the Panthers defense. Their injuries are so bad defensively, and they're just not a very good culture team, and the Broncos are starting to find a groove offensively. This is the most simple one. You play the Broncos 100% and you play the Panthers 0% of the time. The Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers this week. The 49ers are still a play for me. I'll tell you this. The 49ers are so freaking ravaged. Like, it's so nuts. It's so nuts. Their defense is ravaged. Their offense is ravaged. But the Cowboys I think the Cowboys are about to implode, if they haven't already. I mean, the stories that are coming out, and just with Jerry Jones as an owner, it's just looking really weird over there, and I think it could implode the team. So I'm going to stick with the 49ers because they've historically dominated the Cowboys over the years. So I'm going to play the 49ers defense this week. And the Cowboys, I'm not playing them. Micah Parsons and Deron Bland, who hasn't played all year, they've already been ruled out. Obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence on the IR. They've got lots of injuries. Kendricks, the linebacker, he's questionable. I'm just staying away from the Cowboys, even though the 49ers offense is dealing with so many injuries, you wouldn't believe it. The Cowboys, I'm not playing them. You can't pay me to. And the 49ers defense, I think that they are a good play this week. Even though I'm not playing the Cowboys this week, I'll tell you what I am doing. Hitting the higher on Dak Prescott's projection this week on Underdog. It's at 0.5 total yards for new customers here. You hit the higher on this one, you're getting free money here. Just go down there in the comments, grab the link that's there, use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. They'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you play this Dak Prescott free projection this week. And then the New York Giants at the Pittsburgh Steelers, our last matchup. The Steelers defense is definitely a good start. The Steelers defense is getting healthier, and the Giants offense, they're always a play away from disaster, right? Like, Daniel Jones has good and bad weeks, and his bad weeks are really, really bad. So the Steelers defense is better than the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Steelers are at home. You can't, there's just no convincing me not to play the Steelers defense the way that they've been playing. And then the Giants defense, I will say they're a low-end play. Their defense is really banged up, and based on the fact that the Steelers looked better with Russell Wilson under center, the Giants defense, I think they're a low-end play because I don't trust the Steelers with Russ yet. I do think that there was an element of surprise in that game. Nobody was expecting Russ to be that good coming back. So I think that with some game tape on him, the Giants can take advantage, but the Giants defense, they're still banged up. So this is a little bit of a frisky play in that Raiders category, but I think I would play this defense over the Raiders defense, for example. So let me know how your lineup is looking this week, and if you want to see where all these defenses line up in my top 12 defensive rankings this week, click on this video right here.